Hello, Antigua ladies. Welcome back to the Wunderkammer, the Cabinet of Wonders. I am still thinking about the yummy breakfast that Mr. Miller made for me this morning. Pancakes with farmer's market jam. But I want to talk to you about lunch. Lunch! You know, people get hungry at midday. They've worked hard or they've thought hard and they need a little pick-me-up. Lunch hits the spot. But if you're traveling or you live some distance from your home and you can't get back there for your meal, what to do? Well, we learned about the firoshki, so you could carry lunch in a cloth. We probably take lunch to school and to work sometimes in a paper bag or a Tupperware container inside a paper bag. People have used leather pouches and such. And it happens that we got our own classic lunchbox. There's a mini version of one. Because a man in Wisconsin, a man named Reynolds, noticed that people were carrying their lunches off in old cake tins and tobacco tins. So he made it a box with a lid. And I used to have one of these when I was a girl. This is a mini version. Mine had Dick Tracy, the detective, on it. This one is the Lone Ranger. But just one opening. And so you have to put all your lunch items in separate containers or they're all mixed together. People have tried to answer that challenge by creating other kinds of lunch boxes. And for example, in Japan, there was not only the furoshiki, which meant you wrapped it around the entire picnic, but there was something called a bento box. And that was made out of usually bamboo. And it had little individual slots in it, so you could put your pickles here and your rice here and such. There was another kind of lunchbox that emerged maybe 200 years ago, and it's called the Tiffin. This one is from India. Now, when I first heard the word Tiffin, a word I had not heard before and didn't easily remember, I thought, okay, it must be a word from an Indian language, from Tamil or Gujarati or Hindi or something like that. But in fact, it is an English word because the British spent some time in India. I hope you'll look up that story and learn more about that as well. But while they were there, they were not used to the heat. And so usually about midday, they would take a tiff. A tiff was like a light liqueur, which like the dessert tiramisu, which means, you know, pick me up, pull me up. This had a lift for them. So it was called a tiff, and pretty soon tiff meant anything that kind of gave you a lift, a light lunch, for example. And a light lunch became a tiffin, and the container in which you housed your tiffin was the tiffin box. So here we are. The tiffin. Now, the tiffin is usually made out of metal. There are other cultures that have made boxes similar to it. For example, in China and Japan, where these were made out of ceramic and metal. Even Sweden produced lunch boxes that looked like the tiffin and actually were sent to India to be used as tiffin boxes. There are big ones. I've seen some as high as a young child. I've seen some that are smaller. Some have more levels. This one has 2, some have 3 or 4 for lunchtime. Now, the way this works is you have the stack, and usually you stack these in a specific order. So you put things that you're not worried about slopping out, like noodles and rice. You put those at the bottom. And then the middle layers might have cold or hot foods, but perhaps vegetables or pickles. Remember, you can make pickles out of lots of things besides cucumbers. And then the top, that was for soups and sauces, because that part of the tiffin usually clamped down tightest and kept your soup or your sauce from spilling out. So let's try and open this one out. Oh, this takes everything I have to get the clamp off. A little bit like a mason jar. You've seen things like that. And this one's in a frame, so the handle is part of the frame, comes off the top. And now we're going to take the lid off, and there's the first level. And then we have a second level. Not all levels have lids sometimes, but this one does, happily. And then you can see it can be removed. So you can lay out your dishes for your lunch. Now when you're done, you just reassemble the empty container like so, one step at a time. Oh, by the way, you might see that label there. This is the little Shiva model. And then you line everything up like so, and you, let's see if I can do this now, clamp it back together. All right, so you have it ready for next time. Obviously, you have to wash it out, so it's ready for next time. Now, the Tiffin is an extraordinary lunchbox, but the way that people receive their Tiffins each day is even more extraordinary. So there is a city in India. It's referred to as both Mumbai and Bombay. Here's another history lesson I'd like you to look up. And just as I said, this is called a Tiffin. A person who carries the Tiffin is called a Tiffinwala, which is somebody who carries or serves as a courier for the Tiffin. Now, another name, a more Indian name for this is Daba. And so there's also the Dabawala. And there are hundreds of them. And each day they pick up from the person who's prepared the lunch, or, and this could be, by the way, a loved one still at home, or it could be a lunch that someone was hired to prepare, but they pick up all these lunches, and then they organize to deliver these to the hungry person at the other end. Hundreds and thousands of Tiffins move in this way. Hundreds of thousands of these Tiffins each day are picked up while they're still hot and tasty. They're, as I said, arranged in such a way such that they can move through the city with these couriers and get in a very short time to the person waiting patiently for their Tiffin to arrive. And then when the luncher is done, they pack this back up, and the Tiffinwalas, the Dabawalas, return and gather these back in and redistribute them to their original places. This is incredible. This happens every day. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of these Tiffins moving quickly through the city. Their accuracy for delivery is something like 99.9%. This is so remarkable that Harvard University and other business people have studied the Tiffin and the Tiffinwala, this incredible system for delivery. And especially during this time when so many of us are staying home to stay safe and to keep our neighbors safe, but still have needs, we recognize that these kinds of systems that help us get the things that we need are so important. Sometimes they call these things logistics or a supply chain. It's how we work to ensure that people who need what they need, whether it's groceries or masks or medicines or clothing to protect, get these things at the right time. Now, when we get the Tiffin, we're nourished in the same way that some of these other things provide a kind of nourishment. So I hope today that you find nourishment. Nourishment comes in many forms, not just food. It also comes in love and respect and dignity. There's so many things that feed us, that nourish us. I hope that you find that today and every day forward. How I miss you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.